Hi, everyone. I'm here with another episode of Mold Talks. I'm your host, Michael Rubino. Today, my special guest, her name is Lindsey. Lindsey, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself? Let everyone know why you're here.
Hi, I'm Lindsey. I am a mold survivor myself. I am just wanting to raise awareness and be an advocate to help others that are going through it. So that's what I'm here to do.
Amazing. And thank you so much for that. So let's talk about kind of the beginning of the story here. And usually the beginning for most people, like they're not feeling well, they don't even really realize that it's mold. And there's certain, steps that need to be taken to really make that connection. So what was that path like for you? I mean, how long did it take for you to figure out that it was mold, and what were you kind of going through before that?
Well, ours was, we actually had a pipe bust.
Okay.
But it was a pipe bust in the attic and we were out of town. So
Wow.
it soaked the entire house from the attic down, like ceilings caved, the
Wow.
whole saturated. So, and I wasn't hugely pregnant. I was like halfway through my pregnancy at that point.
Okay.
And so we called a mold remediation company and a water remediation company that literally showed up like on the spot to dry the house out
Wow.
and started doing their thing. We moved back in. This was in 2018. And then we moved back into the house once they finished. So that pipe bust happened Memorial Day weekend, and we moved in like at the end of summer. And I am starting to notice I have a chronic cough. I'm pregnant. I'm swelling. I started like falling a lot and just having just weird symptoms happen that they kept thinking maybe it's just your pregnancy, right? And then I ended up having to go like on steroids almost the entire second half of my pregnancy because they couldn't get rid of the cough and the chronic sinus infections like over and over and over again.
Wow.
And about like October of 2018, I'm like 7, 8 months pregnant at this point. And I notice the kitchen island, I see like this mold growing. I don't know that it's mold. It looks like maybe it could be mold growing up from the ground onto the wood of the island. And I had my husband look at it. I'm like, what if that's mold? I don't know. We need to have it looked at. So I called the remediation company that did the original work to like dry the house out. And they come out and they're like, yes, this is mold. I guess the island was like left along with some other things we find out later on, but the island was left and not properly dried out. And so there was like black mold spreading and all underneath the island. But at this point, I'm like, I know nothing about mold. And so they just tell me, we're mold certified. This is what we do. Like, you're going to be fine. You and the baby are fine. And so 8 months pregnant, I'm sitting in my living room with the house exposed and they're like ripping into this black mold. And they're like, it's fine. We can tell by looking at it that it's not toxic. You're safe. Like, don't worry about it. Start ripping into this mold. They tell me it's all gone and it's going to be fine. So I'm like, okay. I'm just trusting them. It's fine. Well, fast forward to me delivering the baby. As soon as I deliver the baby, I lose like use of my body, like slowly. So like even in the hospital, I start stiffening up. And by the time we get home from the hospital, it starts spreading more and more to where I can't sit on my knees anymore. I can't open and close my hands. I cannot physically, like the weakness in my body, I couldn't go to lift the baby and hold her up to me to like feed her or anything. I mean, I couldn't squeeze a toothpaste. I couldn't dress myself. I couldn't like literally get a shirt over my head because I couldn't lift my arms higher than this. And my hands were stuck like bear claws where I was just like this, like all nerve pain, just like shooting through my body. It was just, I got to the point where I was stuck in a bed with a newborn. We had to have like people around the clock at the house taking care of me and the baby because I couldn't get out of the bed any longer. And my husband would have to like lift me to get me to the car. And it just started on this journey of like going to tons of doctors trying to figure out what's wrong with me because since I was pregnant, it kind of complicated things and made people think it had something to do with the pregnancy at first.
Yeah, I was about to
And
ask that. Like that would make, that would make a lot of sense if that were to occur, because at that point it's like, what a huge coincidence. You just had birth. You could start thinking that there's complications there, but also what a crazy coincidence. At the same exact time, your house burst. You had to, get a contractor out there to dry it out. Obviously I mean, did they cut open walls and stuff in your house? And
they they did, but now I know they only cut like not even a foot up. So like half a foot all the way
But like
around.
what about all the insulation that was wet in the wall cavity from that foot up, right? Because if it came from below, I mean, that insulation acts like a sponge. It's going to keep that moisture
Right.
there. It doesn't matter how much you dry it out. You're not going to pull it all out of there. So that was the big gross error that they made there, I guess, right?
Yes, and they also left like portions of the wet insulation in the attic, so they didn't pull all of it out, not realizing
Mm.
it was still wet. I don't know.
Oh my God, it's a nightmare. I'm sorry you dealt with that.
Yeah.
So you're going to these doctors at this point. They're obviously thinking that there could be, because most doctors don't think about mold or water. Even if you kind of mentioned, oh, by the way, I'm having all this stuff done because of a burst pipe, they still may not necessarily correlate the two. So they probably went and started kind of diving into this rabbit hole of, oh, it's got to be related to your pregnancy. Am I right?
Well, wildly enough, we live a pretty like healthy lifestyle. So I was already with a functional medicine doctor,
Oh,
and she
nice.
actually kept asking me, she's like, is there mold in the house? I'm like, no. We had like this huge company that's like mold certified come in and they cleared the house. We have no mold. It's not mold. We need to move on from it. It's not mold. Like I trusted them that it was gone. And so for a year, I was hospitalized overnight for 10 days with a newborn, and they did spinal taps, brain scans. They were like convinced that I had Guillain-Barré, that it was a brain tumor because it was affecting both sides of my body from like my neck down. And they knew that it was something in the brain, like neurological, but they just could not figure it out. And even one of the neurologists at the hospital asked me, he's like, have y'all been living in mold? And we're like, I mean, we had it at one point, they came in and remediated it. Like, we definitely don't have mold. Like, again, I'm like, it's
Yeah.
not mold. It was hard for me to believe myself even that mold could do something that extensive to my body, like paralyzing me
Yeah,
like
that makes sense, especially considering the fact that you hired these professionals, you trusted that, they knew what they were doing. And, when they told you that there was no mold there, why would you believe otherwise? Right.
that.
And, yeah, no, that's extremely frustrating. So what ended up happening from there?
So it took a year of me in denial.
Okay.
And it was Christmas. It was right after Christmas time. So it's January 2020 at this time. And we had done like a little makeover in the playroom upstairs on the second floor of the house. And we were spending lots and lots of time in there. And every time I was in that room, I felt almost drunk and
Mm.
like very dizzy and lightheaded. And it was every time I went up there and sat in that room for an extended period of time. And I told my husband, I'm like, something is just not right. Like, I'm telling you, I feel drunk. Like, I feel like I'm on something when I'm
Wow.
in the room. And so, and I never, also too, because of how my body was, I did not use the stairs very often. Like, I missed out on a lot of things, like putting the kids to bed at night and doing their bedtime stories. Like, my husband had to do all those things because I lost the ability with my body to use the stairs. So when I was up there, he was like helping me get up the stairs. Right. And so I had gone to go use a bathroom on that second floor, and I looked up and there is this like black mold crawling out of the air vent. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I start going room to room, and I'm just like looking all over the house, and it's coming out of so many vents on the second floor of the home. And because I don't go up there and my husband wouldn't think to look for that, we missed it. And so I'm like very blessed though that did happen, because we would have never put two and two together. I still did not know it was because the house was not properly dried out at this time. At this point, I'm like, man, how is this happening? My mind is spinning. I'm like, is this causing my symptoms? Just, that's kind of what put us on the road of like further testing, figuring out what's going on. And come to find out there was like mold in every single room of the house. Wow. And so we had to leave. We tried to remediate the home multiple times. And because of like financial reasons, it's very expensive when your entire home is covered in mold like that. We tried to do like room at a time and then like move back in. And it just got to the point where we had to walk away from everything, especially once I started learning more. And I actually shared my story, and a lot of people were put in my path that educated me on things. And so we made the decision to leave all of our contents, leave the house, and walk away and start fresh. We still own the mold home, but we are renting, and we have, I watched your podcast with Christina Bear. That is, she's our counsel. So, and we just love her. So, yeah.
Yeah, she's awesome. And, I'm hopeful that you'll have a happy resolution to this when it's all said and done. But I'm glad that you made the decision to prioritize your health right now, because I think that's really important, right? Like, get out of there. I know it's not easy. I know it's difficult, but it's the best thing for you and your family now. And obviously you'll work through like, what can you do to fix the home and eventually either move back in there, sell it to another family, and start a new chapter, and do it in a safe manner. And I think that, that's what the outcome always needs to be. And, looking kind of at all the resources we have, there's so many troubling parts of this story. And this is why I'm fighting for people like you and myself that deal with this stuff on a daily basis. We have companies that are certified, whatever that means at this point, that, do this type of work, which directly impacts your health. I mean, and I really think that mold professionals should almost be like doctors, right? You're home doctors. You are scientifically improving the home so that it does not impact someone medically. This requires a great deal of intelligence, understanding in building pressurizations, microbiology, most of which in my field, unfortunately, the guys barely graduated high school. So it's a very interesting industry that needs to be thoroughly revamped. And my plan is to help do that through education. The book was a great starting point, but I realize there's a lot more that's needed. This podcast is really, kind of meant to create awareness around like just how bad these situations can get. And they happen all the time.
Yeah.
And people come in and they're like, I had this certified company come in here, or this licensed company come in here, and I want to let me just raise the alarm here, guys. To be certified, it's a 3-day class. In Texas, it's a 5-day class. So a little bit better in Texas. But, if you ask me, can someone learn everything there is to know about how a home can impact a person in 5 days? I tell you, absolutely not. Impossible.
No.
It's impossible. It's taken
instruction too,
You have to be, I think the only reason why I am regarded as good as I am, I think is really because A, I've been around construction my entire life. My dad's been a contractor. B, I was always kind of a nerd and into science and mathematics. So it came very natural to me to understand building pressurization and to dive into microbiology and understand how these microbiological pollutants can impact a person. And it was very easy for me to bridge the gap there and then look at, okay, we have these pollutants that grow inside of our walls. And when you look at the industry as a whole, what do? They say, oh, we'll just cut a foot out, right? Because they're looking at it cosmetically. Well, I see some mold here. Let me just cut that out and we're good to go. It's like, but what about what that mold is creating over time? And it's really disheartening because this impacts you and your family right now, today. For years,
like thing they look for too. Like in the medical, they've totally downplayed what it can do to you, to where me as a victim, I was even downplaying it and thinking there's no way it's doing this to me. And I can't even tell you how many people I run into today just because I shared my journey. I do have a lot of people reach out to me about mold. And I had a lady like a week ago that was like, I had somebody come out and test my house for mold. It was positive. But I'm like passing out in my house. There's no way that it's making me like pass out, to where they've called an ambulance like 4 times because she literally just passes out in the house, and she's in complete disbelief that mold can do that. And it's because it's been downplayed.
It's been downplayed. There's ongoing studies at the EPA, for an example. It's a 20-year study that if I were involved, I could have helped wrap up in about 20 minutes. The reality of the situation is this is a medical concern. And when you have a medical concern, you need to have adequately trained people to deal with such medical concern.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have that.
No.
They're a dime a dozen, right? I mean, literally a needle in a haystack. That's the problem here. And, truthfully, I love helping people, but I'm one person. I can't help everybody, right? So we have to come together and say, look, this is a problem. Here's a solution. What's the solution? Doctors need to be trained that their environment and the impacts that your environment has can cause or exacerbate illness. That's step one. That's right now we're like in denial as a society, right? Actually, COVID-19, obviously nothing good came out of the pandemic, but if there's one thing that we've learned, it's that something that we cannot see can harm us, right?
Yes.
And with mold, that's what we're dealing with, and the biotoxins and all of that. Now, with that being said, I think as a society, we're more open to the fact that, health is a little different than we thought, right? Mm-hmm. And when you look at, people that were impacted by COVID-19 the worst, it's people who are predisposed to other genetic deficiencies and other illnesses. And we have to look at health more holistically, because a lot of these illnesses, again, are caused or exacerbated by our environment. What food are we eating? What air are we breathing? What water are we drinking, right? And this isn't rocket science here. But the reality of the situation is we have to confront this head on and say, this is a problem and we need to do something about it. And we need to train our medical doctors to know what to look for when they're dealing with environmental impacts. Because again, remember how you went earlier, you went to a professional and this professional told you, I'm certified in mold, your house is fine.
Showed me their
showed you, right? Now, yeah. We also need to be able to go to doctors, and for doctors to understand how to diagnose if that's even true or not, right? So you get two sides of the equation. One of the reasons why I'm so effective in what I do is because when you work with me, you don't just work with me, it's a 3-part triangle. I work with the best labs in the country to help understand what data is going on inside your home. What are the impacts scientifically? There's no hocus pocus. It's just, this is what's there. This is what needs to be reduced, right? You have the medical side of things. They understand the types of testing that you need to take to identify what's going on inside the body. And you know what? It's crazy, but they always correlate. Mm-hmm. And people could say, oh, it could be from food or whatnot. Well, if I got 500,000 spores of aspergillus per cubic centimeter, right? And we also have penicillium, we have ochratoxin A. We know that mold produces ochratoxin A, and you have high levels of ochratoxin A inside your body. Could it be from food? Sure. But why would it not be more likely that it's from your home when there's so much of it in your home?
Ours was is it Chatomium? How do you say that?
Chatomium.
Yeah.
Yep.
So ours was in that, and it showed up on my test. And so for me, it was just like the nail in the coffin for me to like really know that was, because I did some research and I had no idea, like it can only grow in like a water damaged, like I can't even be exposed to it when I'm like walking around outside.
No, it would be unlikely to be in your food supply as well. Not impossible, but unlikely. Yeah. And the sad reality of it is, Chatomium is a heavy water damaged mold. It requires a good amount of water consistently to grow. It typically only grows in, water damaged buildings. And so, it's pretty obvious at that point, right? That your home is impacting you. But how long did it take for you to figure that out? Too long, obviously.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Why?
And
Because we don't have the infrastructure.
yeah, it was, I will say too, like it almost happened. I know now, like it all happened the way it was supposed to happen, because once I got sick, me getting sick and not being able to walk is what opened my eyes to other environmental toxins. And that's what made us really like take our clean lifestyle to another level, because I was seeing some improvement when I lowered the toxin load on my body. Even though I was continuously being exposed to the mold in the home, I was starting to have like a little bit of a positive, I don't know, like effect on my body, just removing the shampoos and all, and, you know, the air, cleaning, having air filters and all the things, the water, we did it all, right? And so then when I went to a doctor that starts explaining all of that to me and how what mold does, I already believed it at that point. You know, then it was like compared to some people that come to me and tell me they have mold, they have to go through the whole environmental toxins can make me sick, right? They have to go through that first and believe that before they can come to realize, wow, mold can like kill me and it can paralyze, can make me pass out. It can cause neurological damage, you know? It takes time to get there because it's been downplayed, like I said.
For so many years, it was throw some bleach on it, paint over it, right? I mean, these are the common misnomers that we came to learn and believe. You know, when you talk to my grandparents, you know, I mean, that's kind of the way they viewed it. We just throw some bleach on it. Well, actually, Grandpa, you know, here's why you can't do that. You know, and when you look at it all like this, right? Yeah, we have a lot of reversal to do. It's really frustrating for me because it's like all I see are tragedies, and it's like, how many more families do I have to watch get sick before we can turn around as a society and say, this is effed up. We need to do something about this. And that's what it's going to take, you know, and there's, you know, we're doing a lot of legislative stuff. We have a nonprofit that we're actively working on launching, and we're working under the premise of, you know, this nonprofit in order to help change things. And we have a couple of bills that are being presented to Congress that we help write, that we help, you know, really make sure that it was coming into existence. Because you know what? Mold is not a health hazard in any state. Did you know that? It's wild. It's not a classified health hazard like lead or asbestos, which is insane. It's not.
I mean, I literally did not know that.
I swear to God. Yeah. Not classified as, so that's step one. It's got to be known as a health hazard so that everybody knows to take it seriously. Because as long as it's not considered a health hazard, why do people need to take it seriously? Right. So the first thing is we have enough research and data out there, both scientifically and clinically, to prove that it's a health hazard. As a matter of fact, you can go on the American Lung Association website right now. It'll tell you any particle smaller than 10 micrometers is a health hazard because it bypasses our self-defense mechanisms and enters our bloodstream. So I consider them a pretty credible source. It's a health hazard, right?
Yeah.
So we need to call it as such. And then we need to, you know, educate people. And I understand there's a liability, there's an economic, you know, challenge to all of this, right? But we have to confront it. The only way to overcome anything is to confront it. If we just keep ignoring it, it's going to keep making us sick. It's going to keep killing us. It's going to keep ripping families apart. And we're not going to get anything positive out of that. The only thing that positive comes out of anything is by confronting it and figuring out how do we cope with it.
Yeah.
And it's simple. It doesn't, like, it's expensive right now because the reality of the situation is there's been such a lack of handling with mold, right? So for your example, yours was an insurance claim, right? Had that home been remediated properly the first time, you'd be in that home. You would have never got sick. So things will get less expensive when we confront how do we fix it in the first place properly, scientifically. Step two, when you're a homeowner and you're educated on the topic, right? a small leak happens, or even a big leak in your case, you know, to take care of it properly. It's all covered by insurance, what have you. And you're cleared. Okay. When you don't do that, which happens so often, what do you end up having? You end up having years worth of maintenance issues. You know, for most people, when I walk into their home and we're like, okay, look, here's the project plan. Here's all the areas. I have all the data. It's like 5 to 10 different areas that need to be addressed. So we're talking anywhere from 20 to 25 years worth of maintenance issues. And they're having to pay for stuff that wasn't even them. It was the previous owner or the previous owner. That's why it's so costly.
Yeah.
You know, it's the lack of education and the lack of understanding of how much this stuff impacts our health. And it's not just mold too, it's bacteria as well, all from water damage situations. Now you're less likely to have bacteria because it sounds like a water supply line on an interior, but if it was a drain line, for example, I mean, it could be riddled with bacteria. You could have two sets of problems to deal with. And that does happen. Or if the water came in from outside, it could have dragged bacteria in with it too.
Yeah, ours was fresh water.
Yeah.
Where like, you know, pipe bust.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, it's remarkable to me. And I appreciate you coming in and sharing your story and having this candid conversation with me, because as you can see how passionate I am about how much this really needs to change. And I know you are too, because you're deeply affected by this.
Yes. Well, and I see so many times where people are in denial that their house is making them sick. Like they even know that there's mold in the house, but they're like, oh, it's not bad. It's not a whole lot to where it's doing this to me.
Yeah. Well, the only way to know that is to test it, right? I mean,
right. And test your body.
A million spores can fit on the head of a pin. Just want to make that clear. So if you see a big spot on the wall, it's probably a lot there. Probably a lot there. It colonizes, it grows together, right? So you're seeing, you know, millions of particles right there. It's between 2 and 4 microns in size. So when you see it, there's a lot there, right? It's really there. And most of the scary part about this stuff is most of the time, you know, you may see some obvious signs of some water damage, but most of the time, the really visible stuff is behind the wall. Yeah. It's trapped in between the baseboard and the wall. It's behind the wall. It's in the framing. It's not as obvious. It's in the HVAC. It's growing like wildfire in the HVAC and the ductwork, impacting the air that you breathe, right?
Well, and for us, the island, so I thought that they fixed it, right? But I remember when everything came out, the guy was like, I need to take the countertop off and I need to get up under the floor to properly do this. And they were scared they were going to break the countertops. So they decided to just leave the countertops. So they kind of just painted around everything. And and they were like, it's fine though. Like, it's totally fine. Like, we can do it just doing that. And I was like, okay, sure. Like, y'all are the experts. You know, you're the experts. You do. And when I was continuously not getting better and time went on, I went and got a wrench out of the garage. I was like, I'm going crazy. I know I'm not crazy. There has to be mold still in that island. I went and got a wrench out of the garage and pried a piece of like I don't know what it was, like a molding or something.
Yeah, sure.
And it was solid black on the other side of it. Solid black. And that's when I knew. I was like, I knew it. They totally just patched it. Still there. So
yeah, and like, you know, it's not that complex. Yeah, there's checks and balances. And the problem is that these guys aren't really following the checks and balances. And, you know, I'm sure they did some testing, right? And said it's all clear, right? But I'm sure what they didn't even do that. Okay.
They didn't even test the mold when they got there, and they didn't test it when they finished it and warrantied it.
Interesting. Wow.
Which now I know in the state of Texas, you actually do have to test before you
totally illegal. Yeah. In 7 states, that would be completely illegal, including Texas. Yeah, it's just common practice, right? It's you test, you get the data, you put a plan together to improve the data, you test after the fact to make sure that the data has actually been improved, right? It's a science. It's not,
yeah.
How do you
they told me they were so good at their job, and because of their certification, they could tell that it wasn't toxic by looking at it. And I was
Mm,
like, oh, okay, you
okay.
know.
So for all listening, this is a very interesting point here. I am certified by a few different boards, and I will tell you, as a certified person, that I do not just look at mold and tell you that it's safe or not safe. I tell you, I highly recommend testing to understand the quantity and the species. And the reason being is because even if I think it looks like Stachybotrys, it could be Catomia, could even be Aspergillus, right? Because many different species of mold could be black in color. But on top of that, I will tell you just some crazy, interesting stories, which will tie this all together. I have seen a water damage stain on a wall, and it looked just like that, a water damage stain on the wall. I thought to myself, maybe it dried out in time, like, I don't know, we should test it. And in testing it, there's hundreds of thousands of species of hundreds of thousands of mold spores colonized in the form of Aspergillus. So completely shocked me, because I was like, wow, I would have never guessed that. That's one of the many reasons why testing is the only way to scientifically understand what's there. And I think it was after that experience that I realized, you know what, it does take visual out of it completely, because you could visually think it's okay and it's not okay. And so at that point, I don't operate on visual at all, because I think it's hocus pocus. And you have these guys, these old school guys, probably like the people you worked with, that come in and say, visually, it looks great. It's fine. It looks like it just came out of the lumber mill, but then you test it and there's millions of spores there. And that's, millions of spores obviously is a lot of opportunity to get inside your body and wreak havoc. So we have to shift the way we look at this. This is a scientific project. It's a scientific process, and there needs to be checks and balances. And the only way you know that it's actually done is by scientifically testing it and looking at the data and making sure, okay, yeah, it was definitely growing, and now we just have some fragments and remnants of it. I think we got it. That's how it's done. So yeah, I mean, it sucks that these people have these viewpoints and tell things like that, because here you are thinking everything is fine, and you get sick because you believe them and they misled you. And I don't know if it was malicious or if the guy didn't know any better because he never expanded his research after that 3-day class or 5-day class or what have you. But clearly, I mean, I hear all sorts of violations of Texas law. And I'm not an attorney, but I did have to take that 5-day class, so I'm pretty familiar.
Yeah. Well, another thing too that I wanted to just say was interesting to me, and I learned more about mold that way, was that we actually had somebody different come in and do an air sample right in like the beginning of 2019, just because my functional medicine doctor was so sure that there was mold. And so I went as far as to letting just some company I found come in, and they put like this tripod in the middle
Like a
of the
tripod.
room,
Yeah.
sucked in some air, and they were like, oh, it's clear. And ironically, it was in the room with the mold that the heavy black mold was in. And now I know that some of the most dangerous molds are actually really heavy and wet. And so they're really hard to pull in an air sample. So it's worthless. And I just had no idea. Like, I'm like, surely if the air sample is clear, I'm fine, right? So that was like, I don't know. We've just learned so much like through the whole journey of like how it went. But that was another thing that really shocked me.
That's amazing. And actually, if Brian Carr is ever listening to this episode, I'll tell you, he's really great at kind of understanding and identifying. He did an entire study on how air tests, when not utilized properly, like what you just said, where they just set up a tripod in the middle of the room and go, yeah, it's all good, how misleading it can be. And how if you just move the tripod closer to where the actual impact is, you would get a greatly different result. And people in the industry know that, right? So a lot of these guys, they don't want to deal with the need of actually having to deal with remediation, because it's a lot of questions, a lot of consulting that happens with it. They just want to set up an air sample in the center of the room, and 9 times out of 10, when you do that, it's going to tell you that it's all good. right? Because the further you are away from where the mold is growing, the less you're going to pick up in the air. And it's only testing, you know, like you said, it's like I have one right here, right? See this little tripod. So imagine, right? It sits up on top of here, it pumps the air through. You're only getting a little circumference of air that it's sucking right here. And if I'm in a 10 by 10 room, that's a very small little area that it's testing over the course of the whole room. And
well, only looking for spores, right? Not
and it's
mycotoxins.
only look for spores. It's not looking for mycotoxins. I'm not sure if it even picks up fragments or if it just picks up the full spore off the top of my head. I mean, obviously it depends on the lab, but yeah, I mean, it's not very effective at quantifying on a large scale like that. It's really more effective if you're doing it based upon, like, for example, let's just say I have a kitchen sink leak. If you do the air test under the kitchen sink, like right there, that would be a good idea. I think another really good use case is if you are concerned about potential leaking inside of an exterior wall cavity, you can poke a hole through the wall, stick the tube through and pump the air from the wall cavity. It's the less volume of air that you're utilizing or the closest you are to the source, the more likely you are to get an understanding of what's actually happening, right? Because really what an air test does, it tests the spores. So what does that help us do? That if we have sources sporulating constantly, it helps us identify how much is colonized there, how much is it sporulating. Because the more it sporulates, right, the larger the impact usually it is. So it's a good tool, but you have to know how to use it. And I think it's very misused in this industry. And that's the other part about it is it's not just the remediation side. It's the investigation side as well.
Yes.
These guys come in and they clear houses, and I've seen properties that were cleared. Okay. And you pull back the wallpaper and it's a mushroom farm behind it. And it was cleared. Like this place is perfect, cleared.
Yep. We had
and
that
there's
too.
astronomical levels of mold still.
Yeah, we moved back in until we then decided for our case to bring somebody in to actually investigate everywhere where it was left. So like anything that was originally in the house from the water damage event, we had all of that looked into, and it was just everywhere. And I had just had a clear testing results, you know? So it's just, yeah, it's definitely both parties.
Yeah. It's tough to tackle, right? There's a lot more that needs to be done, and it's hard because you can't really standardize. The testing side to standardize would be very difficult unless you standardize kind of like these are the 5 tests you need to take, and these are the locations you need to take them in. You know, like obviously, I personally believe that every single HVAC system should be tested.
Yes.
But most guys don't test HVAC systems. They just want to set up air pumps in center of rooms. And they'll argue that, well, if the HVAC was contaminated, there's a supply in each room, I would have picked it up. And it's like, not necessarily, right? Not necessarily. And even if you only picked up a nominal amount, think about how much is being produced through that HVAC system. It's settling in the dust. And then as you kick up the dust and it enters your breathing zone and enters the body, it creates this situation where you feel unwell, right? It's just too much particulate overloading your immune system. Again, not rocket science, but why aren't we testing the dust inside the home to understand how much is in our environment and where's it all coming from? Why? Because the EPA released the PCR technology and then put a little disclaimer that, you know, this is for research purposes only. It's PCR technology. The only thing we're researching is how do we use this technology to come up with a better standard. That's the only research that's needed. The PCR technology does quantify what's there, how much, all of that. There's no research in that. So why aren't we using it? Because these guys they can't think for themselves. And that's the big problem is we don't have thinkers here. We have people that follow directions, and they can't do that well either. And I know that it's all doom and gloom here because, you know, obviously we're talking about the problem, but the light at the end of the tunnel is this is actually very simple. And how we get the change that we so desperately need is we become educated ourselves as a consumer, as someone who owns a home, as someone who rents an apartment. And we hold each other accountable to do better. Right?
Yeah, I'm sharing stories like this. I know just personally from me, like sharing and speaking out about it, so many people have connected the dots where they're like, I need to test my house for mold, and almost every time where it's like a mystery illness that they have been like battling for a while after a water damage event or something, it's been like mold.
Yeah.
Especially I'm in Houston, Texas. So, it's like real humid here.
Oh yeah.
And that's a problem in itself. Like if you live in Houston and you do not have a dehumidifier, you are feeding it,
Right. Well, and I think that's the other thing about the educational piece. Like, yes, some climates you need humidifiers, right? They're dry climates, but don't overdo it. Don't add so much humidity that mold starts to grow. In humid climates, you're going to need dehumidifiers, right? And you need to make sure that that's all set up properly so you're keeping, the humidity levels below 60% where mold starts to be able to grow. It's just kind of knowing your surroundings. And again, the professionals that walk into your home, they also need to know their surroundings and know how to apply products properly, how to install products properly, and make sure that, you don't need them every 6 months, because that would also be a waste. And we have all these technologies coming out there designed to kill mold, like, these dry fogging stuff. And you see all this stuff all the time. And it's a pipe dream. Go look at the case study on dry fogging, without mentioning any names, just type in dry fogging case studies. You'll find it. There's a white paper. The Army's involved. They did the Army Corps Engineering Department was involved and did a whole study on it. But you know what? It's transparent. It tells you that the mold's going to come back. Why? Because it's not eliminating the source of the problem. It's a Band-Aid.
Yeah.
But it's cheaper. So they're like, Band-Aids are good. It's cheaper. It's not good, because it's going to give you a false sense of security. And by the way, it still costs money. And I don't know. I'm a believer in, if you're going to spend money in something and invest in your health, you want to do something that's going to work. You don't want to like spend $500 and then it keeps you away from the doctor for 6 months, but then you're right back there. What's the point in that? We want to fix things indefinitely. I think we're always searching in this industry. We're always searching for a magical solution or, some cost-effective way of dealing with this. But unfortunately, the cost-effective way of dealing with this is dealing with it once and for all the right way and educating people on how to deal with it once and for all the right way. And then guess what? We will deal with it. It's in new construction homes. It's in brand new homes.
Yeah.
Builders aren't building properly. They have no education in microbiology. They should. Restoration contractors, they find issues and they build over it because they don't know any better.
Yep.
Homeowners don't think it impacts their health, so they just let it happen and let it get worse and worse until.
And the financial side,
And the financial side of it.
They're like, I financially, this will take me under. Like, I can't take this on. And so then the denial of, it's not affecting my health, it feeds that, they're
Sure.
like.
Well, yeah, financially, it's more convenient to not have to confront it, because you're like, man, this can cost 40, 50,000, 100,000, whatever it is. Right. And yeah, I mean, I get it. It's like you start to rationalize like, well, let's be sure that it's not that, and I get that. I do get that. But the reality of it is it doesn't help. It really doesn't help. If we had better setups in place where there were better professionals, where there were better builders, where all of this stuff was easily avoidable, because it is, then we would have smaller problems. Then your average cost of mold remediation would be a few $1,000s. It sucks, but guess what? Doable and worth it. It's our health.
We just need to multiply.
Well, yeah, the idea is to kind of develop more of the training platforms. It's just where my attention is right now. And I'm writing another book as well to kind of help really more with that other process that we talked about, where we're trying to understand, like, is my environment a problem? So the Mold Medic is an expert's guide on mold removal. And this new book is going to kind of go dive into like really why should you be concerned about removing mold in the first place. And I think that that's, you know, kind of the book I probably should have started with, although I think the sequencing almost does make sense because people needed this book first so they can really dive into like, okay, I'm aware that I have a problem. I need to fix it. Now people need to understand and be aware of the fact that they likely do have a problem and why they need to be concerned about it in the first place. Then they can go and buy this book on what to do about it after that. But we do need to confront this and be aware of it and tackle it head on. And we're asking Congress for support. So far, we're getting it in 2 states. We have 48 states to go. We are, say that again?
2 states. I'm just curious.
So Florida and Ohio. Vermont is pretty close as well. We're not stopping, and this is just phase 1 of our agenda. So we have, I think 5 different phases planned. Phase 1 is real estate disclosure laws. There's states that, you know, you don't have to disclose if you had water damage or mold, which is criminal in my opinion, especially if it's a health hazard. So it's health hazard, classification and real estate disclosure laws. That's agenda 1. Agenda 2, we need to tighten the insurance companies up. And it just, you know, it is what it is. They have to play ball. Can't be any more $10,000 caps. It's, you know, or no mold coverage. It's just, look, this is a part of our ecosystem. You can't not cover it. We have to figure out a way to deal with the other stuff. And they're a business. So if they go out of business, then we don't have insurance. So I'm not saying that it's not a complicated problem, but what I will say is it cannot be operating the way it is now. And we have to change that. And the only way to confront it is to confront it, right? And have this roundtable discussion of how do we deal with it properly? How do we mitigate insurance companies going out of business so that there are insurance companies to cover us, but also be covered, right? And so, you know, there's plenty of ways to kind of go about that. The government, I think, needs to tackle this. I mean, we're spending just insane amounts of money in almost every category, you know. Just as a quick example, I have to, we're donating $30 million to get crack pipes into the hands of people.
I was like, yes,
yeah,
I know.
I had to talk about current events a little bit. And okay, I understand, like, we're trying to make it safer for people who are addicted to drugs, and I have no problem with that. But I just want to compare one quick thing. We're spending $30 million on crack pipes. And this year, we've only spent $1 million on research of environmental impacts like mold.
Yeah.
Where are our priorities?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that we don't need to help drug addicts. We do. But I am saying that if we're gonna put mold so low on the category that it gets less money spent than crack pipes, I think we have an issue with prioritizing our health. And by the way, mold, bacteria impacts mental health, which could cause drug addictions, right? Poor quality of life, poor mental health could cause someone to turn to drugs and alcohol, right? So I don't know. Let's reverse that. $1 million crack pipes, 30 million towards fixing the impact that creates a lot of mental health issues. I just think it's more root cause, in my opinion. But there's a lot to unpack, you know, and I hate getting political because it doesn't, like, it's a very complicated project and process. But the reality of the situation is we all have to come together, because it doesn't matter if you're Republican, Democrat, or what have you. We all have the same health issues. We all deal with the same problems. We need to come together and ask for the support that we desperately need to make this change. And when we do, we'll be successful.
Yeah.
So we got off on an amazing tangent here.
Yeah.
which is always great. These kind of unfold the way they unfold, and it makes them unique in their own way. I don't script any questions or anything like that, which kind of makes it all fun and part of the process, because it's just whatever road we go down, we go down. But I do want to turn back to you before we end off. And one of the things that I love to ask people is, because, for those listening, it's so helpful. What is the one thing that, if someone was in similar shoes as you, went through a similar path or journey, what is the one thing that you would recommend to them, like now that you've gone through it, that they would benefit if they knew sooner?
Um, I would say really doing your research before trying to fix it yourself. Like finding a quality person. In fact, people come to me all the time and they're like, who do you recommend to help me get rid of it? And I'm very transparent. I'm like, I personally don't know somebody around here locally that I trust to fully remove it. I just don't. And so
Sure.
my thing is like, don't try to tackle it yourself. And also, if you are feeling sick, like don't give up. Like keep going and trying to find a doctor that is like educated with mold, because me not giving up, it brought this fight in me to not give up on my body, because I knew that there was something wrong and that I needed to just find the root cause. And so just don't give up. Like you're not crazy and there is an answer. You just cannot give up on your body. So those
That's
two.
amazing advice. Yeah, Lindsay, I really want to thank you so much. This was such a special episode. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to help me fight the good fight here. And all the help is much appreciated. This is obviously a very real thing. It impacts real people like you and I, as we've uncovered today. And I just, I desperately want to see the change that's really, really needed, because this is going to save just so many hardships and the decline of quality of life and mental health and everything that comes with this, right? I mean, it's too much. It's too much. And there's something we can do about it. So thank you for being here to help me create that awareness today. And you are helping me do something about it by just being here today.
Well, thank you for having me. So, and thank you for what you're doing, because it's incredible. I wish that we could duplicate you. And
Thank you. I appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, that would be interesting. We'll start cloning me or something like that. But I think, we are cloning me, right? Like there's a piece of me that we get to capture in every episode. And I think just by having this conversation, like there are going to be people that really connect with you and I's conversation today, and are going to want to join in the mission. And I think it's going to take an army of us, right? To get the
yeah,
change. We have to demand it, in
yeah,
order to get it. So I think, it's really amazing. I don't know. It's kind of really, when I look at it, like just super strange how I've gotten here today. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's the divine forces at work. I'm just going with it. And I really, I
so
hope that at the end of my journey, I will look back on my life and say, man, I was able to accomplish something that, needed to be accomplished. Right. And it helped humanity. And that's what I'm looking to do.
yeah, you've definitely stepped into your calling. You're living it out every day. So
Yeah. Which is, I'll tell you, it's a beautiful feeling, to know that the work you're doing is really beneficial for so many people. It's really exciting. And, I say it all the time, but once I've gotten this solved and everybody's better off for it, I'll be happy to, sell sandwiches on a beach somewhere or something like that. And, know that I did everything that I could to do my part. So really appreciate you for taking the time again today and joining this fight with me. And I can't wait for everybody to hear this.
yeah, thank you so much.
All right. Talk soon.
And if you ever need somebody to help you fight, I'm here.
Yeah. Actually, before we go, why don't we ask that? So if someone wants to connect with you, how can they find you?
On Instagram, it's Lindsey K. Jones. And I share a lot on there about our story and our journey. And I share a lot about mold. So doctors here in Houston and resources in the Houston area. So
Awesome. Well, thank you, Lindsay. Really appreciate that. And if you're listening, you want to connect with Lindsey, you happen to be in the Houston area, check her out on Instagram. Obviously the story was, obviously disheartening and hard, but, she's getting through it. And I'm sure she would be happy to give any guidance she could.
Yes.
All right, Lindsey, talk to you soon. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
Bye.